topic, which is temperature regulation in units. So if you look at this very important description what James Curie gave, he said that if a definition of life was required, it must be most clearly on that capacity by which the animal preserves its power to heat and under various degrees of temperature of the medium in which he lives. And he further went saying that a few degrees of increase in diminution of heat of the system produces disease or death. So you can see that how well he highlighted the importance of temperature regulation of a living being. And even if you go a minor degree above or below this milieu temperature, then it will have disastrous effect, even may lead to death. And this stands very true for newborns and especially the preterm babies who are very vulnerable to effects of both hypothermia and hyperthermia. And that is the importance of learning about temperature regulation in newborns. Now, the hypothermia is associated with increased morbidity and mortality in newborns of all birth weights and ages. So it has both the morbidity and mortality, which is attached to hypothermia. And now it is considered an independent risk factor. So a baby may be absolutely right otherwise, but if he just has hypothermia, it will be an important independent risk factor for mortality. The Western philosophy of the conventional care of the preterm generally consists of placing the preterm under a radiant warmer and uncovering him for full visualization and allowing the radiant heat to reach the body. And that is how, if you see the nurseries or the NICUs, you will find the babies being cared and taken care of warmth. More attention now in the recent times is focused on thermal care immediately after birth. So the neonatologists and the physicians started realizing that the time period when the baby is immediately born is the most important time period when he undergoes hypothermia, and that's why the thermal care immediately after the birth of the baby is now gaining more and more importance. How does this thermoregulation develop? The heat gain and loss is controlled by hypothalamus, you all know that. The thermoelectric system is very immature in newborns. So the basic center of thermoregulation, that is the preoptic chiasma of the anterior hypothalamus, is very immature in preterm babies. And it develops very late in around 25 weeks of gestation. And it may even take up to 36 weeks to mature completely. The other regulatory mechanisms which are there in newborns, most important is the brown fat. We'll talk about this again and again. And the non-shivering thermogenesis. The brown fat and the non-shivering thermogenesis development begins at around 20 weeks and continues completely till shortly after the birth. The high concentration of the triglycerides, rich capillary network, densely innervated sympathetic nerves make nerve endings from the brown adipose tissue are formed slowly as the baby matures on his gestation. Fetal body temperature is maintained always around 0.5 degrees greater than the mother. So much so that if the mother has fever, the baby will have 0.5 to 1 degree more fever than the more temperature than the mother's temperature. The metabolic rate of the fetus per tissue weight is higher than the adult. So if you take every tissue, it is more metabolic active. If you take the mass of the tissue per the surface area of the tissue, if you compare to that of the adult. As I already said, the fetal temperature is consistently 0.5 to 0.3 to 0.5 degrees higher than the mother's temperature. Despite the brown adipose tissue in utero, fetus cannot produce the extra heat. Exposed to the adenosine and prostaglandin E2, the fetus, there is inhibitory signal for the non-shivering thermogenesis. And hence, in the intrauterine life, the thermogenesis from the fetal side is almost nil. What are the risk factors for thermoregulation? So all neonates, kindly see that all neonates in the first 8 to 12 hours are at risk factor for hypothermia or do not have a good thermoregulation. At the same time, prematurity, small for gestational age. So these two are very important factors in addition to the early time of birth of the neonate. So these three factors are the most important factors for the vulnerability of thermoregulation. Apart from this, you may have sepsis, you may have CNS problems and prolonged resuscitation efforts. So how is a premature handicapped as far as the thermoregulation is concerned? The premature has a high surface area to volume ratio. It has a very thin non-keratinized skin. So the stratum cornea is hardly 3 to 4 layers compared to almost 20 layers in adult. Lack of insulating subcutaneous fat, lack of thermogenic brown tissue, that is the brown adipose tissue, inability to shiver, and poor vasomotor response. So these are the points because of which the premature baby is very much handicapped towards thermoregulation. Now, if you understand the mechanism of thermoregulation, you need to understand the mechanism of heat loss, prevention of this loss by one of these mechanisms themselves, the non-shivering thermogenesis and the role of the brown adipose tissue, what are the adversities of hypothermia, and how do you control these hypothermia in newborn period. So my next slides will be dealing on these important aspects about the thermoregulation. So if you look at the heat loss, there are important 4 mechanisms of heat loss. The first important mechanism is the conduction. So in conduction, there is a direct heat transfer from the skin to the object. For example, mattress, the linen on which the baby is lying. Second is the convection. In convection, the heat loss through the airflow and it depends upon the air temperature. The third is the radiation. So there is a direct transfer of electromagnetic radiation in the infrared spectrum. And here the heat is gained by radiation from external radiant energy source and the heat lost by radiation to the cooler walls of the incubator. So you should remember that here it does not depend upon the air temperature. So this particular loss does not depend upon the air temperature. And the next is the evaporation, which is very important soon after birth. So this is the most important mechanism soon after birth. And here the heat loss occurs when the water evaporates from the skin and respiratory tract. And depending upon the maximum relative humidity of the surrounding or less humidity or more evaporation occurs. So let us look at these mechanisms one by one. The first is the evaporation. So heat loss due to diffusion of water molecules from the surface is what is called as evaporation. And the skin thickness plays a very important role in evaporation. So more and more the baby is preterm, more and more thinner the skin is, the evaporation will be more and more higher. So soon after birth, it is the main mechanism, as I said you, and exceeds all other sources of heat loss mechanisms. The gestational age, postnatal age, difference in partial pressure of water, they all alter the amount of evaporative heat losses which occur in a newborn. Coming to the radiation. As I said, the radiation is the electromagnetic energy transfer, and it is based on the temperature difference. It is based on the temperature difference between the baby and the surrounding solid objects. And as I said, very importantly, it does not depend upon the air temperature. So convection is a mechanism which is solely dependent upon the air temperature. So this will depend on how the surroundings, how warm or cold are the surroundings of the neonate. And depending upon this temperature of the surrounding, there will be heat loss or heat gain. Convection, as I said, the heat loss to the surrounding air is through convection, and 40 to 50% of non-evaporative heat losses occur through this mechanism. Heated air expands and moves upwards, which is called as a free convection. So when you look at the incubators, you must have seen certain incubators. So they work on the mechanism of forced convection. So you have two ways to care neonates. One is incubators and second is the warmers. So warmers primarily depend on the mechanism of radiation, whereas incubators mainly depend on the mechanism of forced convection. And the velocity of the air, the position of the baby, the body surface area, the body weight, the air temperature, epidermal maturity, all this will alter the way the convective heat losses occur in a newborn. Conduction is very simple to understand. So this accounts for the most minimal mechanism which is seen in the clinical practice. The temperature loss to the surrounding solid objects in contact with the baby. So here you can see that this baby is in contact with the mattress. So the mattress has a low temperature, then the baby's temperature also will reduce. It is not dependent again upon the air temperature. And if you look at the formula for the heat loss, you can have a thermal conductive constant, which is that for the matrix, and dx by dt is a change in the temperature versus the distance of the matrix. So to summarize, you can see that the evaporation occurs during the bathing of the newborn. So we do not recommend early bathing of the newborn soon after birth. The moisture on the skin, if it is exposed to the air, the linens, the clothes if they are wet, and the insensible loss. These are the mechanisms how the evaporative heat loss can occur in a neonate. The conduction heat losses can occur in day-to-day practice by cold objects or surfaces, by cold hands, which is very important, by the resistant boards which are cold, or even for that matter stethoscope. When you auscultate the neonate, if the earpiece or if the chest piece of the stethoscope is cold, then it will cause the conductive heat losses. If you look at the convective heat losses, any AC vents, windows, drafts of the air, so they all, so this you can see this is open door. So the drafts of the air will all cause excessive, convective heat losses. And if the surfaces of the surrounding of the neonate, they are cold, for example, you can see here, this window is not well insulated. There is a snowfall outside. So this neonate will have radiative heat losses. So these are, to summarize, the mechanisms of heat losses. Okay, you have some questions in between. When does, okay, somebody is asking, when does the brown fat content peak in the human life? So the brown fat content actually increases till around 44 to 46 weeks of life, and after 2 months of life, it starts, it will be there, but it will not have a major role in the temperature regulation. In radiation slides, there is an apparent contradiction between the photo and the text. I didn't understand. So let me go back to the radiation slide. Yeah, I think so you are confusing it with the conductive slide. So in the conduction slide, so yeah, so you are confusing between the conduction and the radiation. So in the conduction slide, you can see that the losses is because of the contact with the mattress. But in the radiation slide, the heat is lost to the surroundings. So I have also marked the surroundings. If the surroundings are cold, then only there will be the heat loss to the cold surfaces. So that is how the difference between the radiation and the conduction. So
नमस्ते सर।
नमस्ते नमस्ते।
ऑनलाइन चल रहा काम?
हाँ, क्लास चल रहा। Okay, so I'm not able to see your question window. Let me just okay, 1 second. Okay, so fine. So are your questions answered, Nilian? And okay, Purvi Mehta has asked that so radiation should depend on air temperature. No, that doesn't depend on air temperature. That is very important to understand. So it is the electromagnetic loss. The air doesn't act as a conductive medium. So the convection depends on the air temperature, but the radiation doesn't depend upon the air temperature. Is that clear, Dr. Purva? Because these mechanisms are very important to understand. Then only we can go ahead understanding, the other noises. So is that clear about the radiation? So about the contradiction of the slide, or confusion between the dependence of air temperature and radiation. Is that clear to all? Am I audible? Okay, fine. So let us move ahead then. So if you look at the mechanism of heat production, there are basically two mechanisms. One is the shivering and non-shivering. The shivering mechanism occurs in adults. It is mediated by small muscle contraction, and here the ATPs are hydrolyzed. Whereas in non-shivering mechanism, it is primarily seen in the newborn babies. You can tell up to 2 months of life, someone was asking. And by sympathetic nervous system and brown fat. So these both are very important and play very important role in non-shivering mechanisms, and ATPs are not involved here. So these are the three major differences between shivering and the non-shivering mechanisms. So if you look at the brown adipose tissue, it's in the last trimester, it constitutes around 0.5 to 1.5% of the body weight, and at term it constitutes around 4% of the body weight. So it grows by almost fourfold in just a couple of months. It is found near highly perfused organ resembling high collared vest. So these are the areas where you will find the brown fat. So these are all the areas where you will find the brown fat. Sites like perinephric, interscapular, nape, axilla, so they all areas you will find the brown fat. Thermogenesis is mediated by the UCP1 found only in the brown fat. The brown fat is rich in 5 monodiodinase, which converts T4 to T3. So it is very rich in this particular enzyme. So I'll not go into much details about the mechanism of brown fat. Basically, there will be an adrenergic neuron which will release the sympathetic signal, and this sympathetic signal triggers the norepinephrine, triggers the release of norepinephrine. Then the cyclic AMP is converted, and the UCP uncoupling occurs, and then the free fatty acids which are released will produce the heat, and finally also some mechanism wherein the active thyroxine is created. So once this occurs, there is a release of the heat, and that is how you'll see that the non-shivering thermogenesis occurs. Now, what are the adverse consequences of hypothermia? If there is a hypothermia, there is a high oxygen consumption, and this high oxygen consumption further leads to hypoxia and bradycardia. There is also a high glucose usage, so there will be hypoglycemia and there will be decrease in the glycogen stores. The high energy expenditure eventually leads to, in long term, reduced growth, lethargy, hypertonia, and poor second cry. And then this again further leads to all this. So you enter into a vicious cycle when you have hypothermia. Apart from this, in the lungs, there will be low surfactant production and there will be increase in RDS. There will be vasoconstriction which leads to poor perfusion, metabolic acidosis. There will be delayed transition of fetus to newborn circulation, and severe hypothermia causes eventually death because of DIC. So you can see here that the neonatal energy triangle, how does it work? So once there is a hypothermia, there will be increased metabolism, there will be increased glucose intake, the use of the glycogen stores, there's a delayed glycogen stores, and then finally the hypoglycemia further leading into all these problems what we have discussed. And at the other side, it will lead to the severe metabolic acidosis and hypoxia. So if you look at the consequences of hypothermia, the hypoglycemia and the metabolic acidosis and hypoxia. So these are the two important, telltales which eventually lead to severe acidosis and death. So to prevent this hypothermic loss, the first incubator was designed by Mr. Pierre Boudin at Paris Maternity Hospital, and they reported that if you keep these small vulnerable babies in these incubators, that would reduce the mortality. You can see almost half, from 66% to 38%, and that started increasing the survival of less than 2 kg babies. So this was the original incubator which Pierre Boudin designed, wherein it had hot water which gave conductive heat to the baby. It was a closed chamber and it was regulated by inflow and outflow and thermal, heating of the water. And it had a small airlet, so it had to some extent also hot air circulating around the baby. So this is a primitive, incubator with convective heat generation and some heat because of conduction. So the next question is, does one temperature work for all neonates? So for that, one should know what is a temperature neutral zone. So what is a temperature neutral zone? The temperature neutral zone represents so somebody is how does increased metabolism cause decreased oxygen consumption? No, 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 no. Shouldn't oxygen? Yes, yes, it should be increased. So when the increased metabolism will eventually lead to more and more utilization of oxygen, and this more and more utilization of oxygen creates a state of relative hypoxia. So they are associated, they are not consequences. Is that clear? So once you have hypothermia, the body goes into a high metabolic state, and once it goes into a high metabolic state, it consumes more and more oxygen, and so eventually there will be a reduction or there will be hypoxia, and this hypoxia will lead to acidosis. So is that clear, Pratik? Or is there still some confusion? So we are not talking about oxygen consumption. So oxygen consumption will definitely increase, but it will be associated with hypoxia eventually. So you're confusing between the causation and the association. Can we move forward? Is that okay? Okay. So as I was talking about the thermal neutral zone, the thermal neutral zone represents the environmental temperature range within which the infant has a normal body temperature and a minimal BMR with lowest oxygen consumption. So your point will further be, clarified here that in a particular temperature range. So suppose this is a thermoregulatory range. 1 minute. Suppose this is a thermoregulatory range. So in this thermoregulatory range, the BMR will be lowest and the oxygen consumption will be lowest. If you go beyond more than this thermoneutral zone or less than this thermoneutral zone, quickly the BMR will increase. As the BMR increases, the oxygen consumption also increases. And as these both increase, there will be rapid reduction in oxygen. So once there is a rapid reduction in oxygen, most of your organs will get hypoxic. Once there is a tissue hypoxia, there will be generation of metabolic acidosis. And this metabolic acidosis further acts upon the heart, reduces the cardiac reserve, decreases its contractibility, and eventually may lead to death. So that is why one should understand how the thermoneutral zone works. And this thermoneutral zone is narrower for the preterm babies compared to term babies. So you have to have a very tight environmental temperature for the preterm babies compared to the term babies. Now, if you look at the heat loss at birth, so a lot of people have worked upon the heat loss, and they have also estimated the heat loss by evaporation, radiation, convection. How does it occur at birth? So as I said, the evaporation is the main mechanism of heat loss at birth, followed by radiation, convection, and then conduction is negligible, almost like 10%. All babies who are more than 2250, body temperature is decreased to 0.9 degrees in just 15 minutes. So that is why, as I said in the earlier slide, more and more focus now is on the hypothermia, which immediately occurs after birth. Because as you can see that even a term baby, loses almost a degree in almost a duration of 15 minutes, which is very detrimental. Now, if you look at the classification of hypothermia, the WHO widely accepted classification is to classify hypothermia into mild, into moderate, and into severe. A mild hypothermia is also called as a cold stress, and it is a cause of concern. However, these babies need not be admitted into the nursery. So you don't need admission of these babies, but definitely you need the maneuvers to maintain the temperature of the baby. On the other hand, if the baby is moderately hypothermic or severely hypothermic, these two babies, they need admission and management of hypothermia. The cold stress can also be assessed by touching the baby's feet, what we call as the touch method. So if the feet are cold and the abdomen is warm, that means the baby is in cold stress. So it doesn't need any admission. But if both the feet and the abdomen are warm, then the baby is in either moderate hypothermia or is in severe hypothermia. You can use a thermometer. If he is above 32 degrees, he is in moderate hypothermia. And if he is below 32 degrees, he is in severe hypothermia. So this simple clinical examination will help you in taking a decision whether I should admit the baby or I should manage the baby with the mother. So if the baby is having hydrate, moderate or severe hypothermia, then he needs admission. Otherwise, he can be managed with the mother. So this is very important and it will often ask in exam as how you will decide whether a baby who is hypothermic can be admitted or should be kept with the mother. And how it is done, how will you explain the mother to identify such sick babies? So as I said, the clinical features of hypothermia depend upon the pathomechanism. The peripheral vasoconstriction will lead to acrocyanosis, pallor, cold extremities, decreased peripheral perfusion. In central nervous system, you will have lethargy, bradycardia, apnea, poor feeding, hypotonia, weak suck. Metabolically, as we already discussed, you will have hypoglycemia, important, hypoxia, acidosis, bilirubin encephalopathy, raised pulmonary artery pressure, respiratory distress, tachypnea. There may be chronic signs like weight loss, inability to gain weight, bleeding, sclerema, and also at times you will have subcutaneous necrosis. So how do you manage? So it goes without saying that the prevention is better than cure. So a set of 10 steps are carried out at birth to reduce the hypothermia, and these are called as the warm chain. Have you heard about the cold chain? So where do you use the cold chain? Where do you use the cold chain? Vaccines. Yes, very good. So in cold chain, we are maintaining the temperature of the vaccine from the point of production to the point of usage of the vaccine. Similarly, we have to maintain a warm chain right from the point of delivery of the neonate till he goes with the mother to the postnatal ward. So this is called as a warm chain. And this will be asked in exam, and it is very important to know that what are the main steps of warm chain. So if you look at sequentially the steps of warm chain, there may be thermal care in the delivery room, a warm resuscitation, immediate drying of the baby, skin to skin contact of the baby, breastfeeding, postponing birth and weighing of the baby, a proper clothing of the baby, rooming of the baby with the mother, a warm transportation, training and awareness. So all these components are very important. In fact, unless you train each and every manpower about the hypothermia and its consequences, maybe an orderly, maybe a hospital attender, maybe a family member, otherwise the warm chain will break. So this is also a very important component which generally you people forget while answering for maintenance of the warm chain. Let us look at the management of mild and moderate hypothermia. So as you look at the cold stress or the mild hypothermia, you cover the baby adequately, remove cold clothes and replace them with warm clothes, warm the room and bed, take measures to reduce the heat loss, ensure skin to skin contact with the mother, and ensure breastfeeding. So these simple steps can be done to take care of the cold stress. Whereas in case of moderate hypothermia, for that matter severe hypothermia, you have to take measures to reduce the heat loss. So warm room and bed, skin to skin contact with mother, apply warm towels, and you have to provide extra heat in terms of incubator, warmer, heater if it is available, and recheck the temperature after 15 to 30 minutes. But if the baby already has a cold injury, then you have to immediately transfer the baby to incubator or warmer. You can do slow or rapid warming of the baby. So how do you do rapid warming? You set the abdominal temperature 1 degree more than the core temperature and set the warmer to 36.5 degrees centigrade. You should give oxygen to the baby. As we already learned, there will be hypoxia. You can give fluid loss bolus to the baby, antibiotics in case you are suspecting sepsis. Vitamin K, because there will be also reduction in the coagulation factors in the liver because of vasoconstriction. Extend blood transfusion if DIC is suspected, and in rare instances, one might have to use also hydrocortisone to stimulate and generate the non-shivering thermogenesis. The interventions which are very important for the temperature control during in community, in transport, and in hospital are given here. Most important in community is to look at the warm chain. I have discussed all the 10 components of the warm chain and the kangaroo mother care. The kangaroo mother care is altogether a different topic. Maybe we will have another lecture for it, so you can read in the book. While transporting the baby, the kangaroo mother care, thermocol boxes with prevalent linen, electrically operated transport incubators, and plastic bubble sheets. So these are usually used during transport. And in hospital, as you all must have seen, we have in the NICU, we have the warmers and the incubators to take care of the baby. So I'll not go into much detail of kangaroo mother care, but this has proven dedicatedly by many studies to keep warm, to keep the baby warm, reduce the apneic episodes, give a better oxygenation, lower infection rates, and these babies generally cry less, are breastfed longer and better, and there is a improved survival. So kangaroo mother care is a very important intervention, as well as reduction of neonatal mortality and hypothermia is concerned. So this is done for babies who are less than 1,800 grams, who are stable, and between 1,200 to 1,800 grams, they should be shifted to referral hospitals. And again, you can use KMC while shifting, and these need to be taken care who are less than 1,200 in the specialized NICU units. So if you look at the equipment which is used for the taking care of the neonates, the most widely used equipment is the radiant warmers. So these radiant warmers have the intense source of radiant heat energy. So they have this quartz crystal here which generates the heat towards the baby, and they have two modes, the servo mode and the manual mode. So we talked about the thermoneutral temperature. So in the servo mode, what we do is we set the temperature at 36.5 degrees centigrade, and if the baby's temperature is less, the warmer will increase its heater output, and if it is more, it will reduce its heater output. So it is the preferred mode of carrying the baby in the warmer. The manual mode is only used in delivery room, or it is used before the arrival of the baby, so that to give the baby a environment which is pre-warmed. The advantages of radiant warmer are it is an open care system. You can see the baby all the time, very easy accessibility, lesser risk of infection because there is no water or water vapor involved here. But most important disadvantage is there will be more of insensible water loss. So if the baby is very small, he is less than 1 kg. So these warmers will produce large amount of insensible water loss. And many times you also will find no uniform heating. For this case, we use in very small babies who are less than 1 kg or 1.5 kg, we can use the incubators. As I've already discussed that these incubators work on the mechanism of forced convection, but at the same time, we have to maintain humidity. So therefore, there is a humidifier and that increases the risk of infection. So they are costlier, the baby's accessibility is less, and there is a small increase in infection. Otherwise, they are very good because they reduce the insensible water loss for transporting the babies and for barrier nursing, especially when the babies are infected. And some of these incubators also have rocking bed, which provides stimulation to the apneic baby. So a lot of comparison between the incubator versus radiant warmer. So the conclusion was that the radiant warmer result in increase in sensible water loss, as already discussed. The result of this analysis do not provide very sufficient evidence that one is better than the other. Now, the babies who are very small, VLBW babies, the babies with birth weights of 750 to 1,500 grams, we use what is called as a clean wrap or the clean wrap. So these are the plastic wraps which are wrapped around the baby. And a lot of studies now tell that soon after the birth, if these small babies are wrapped in the food grade plastic, there is a rapid reduction of the insensible water loss. As I already discussed earlier, that is the main mechanism of water loss. And that's why they there is a better maintenance of temperature soon after the birth. So for all babies who are less than 28 weeks of gestation, nowadays this is recommended as the method of managing the baby soon after birth. So this was a Cochrane on the barrier of heat loss, that is using the wrap or the bag versus routine care. And as you can see that in gestational babies less than 28 weeks, the wrap had temperature 0.76 degrees higher than the control. So it maintained the temperature better than the dry care of the baby. So this is how the baby soon after birth, you can see this baby is around 600 grams. Soon after birth is wrapped in a plastic, and this plastic will prevent his evaporative heat losses, and that will increase the survival of the baby. So conclusion is that the plastic barriers are effective in reducing the heat loss in newborns less than 28 weeks. There's no evidence yet to suggest plastic barriers decrease duration of oxygen therapy, but definitely they reduce the temperature dysregulation. Stockinette caps effective in reducing hypothermia. KMC should be effective in stable newborns who are even more than 1,200 babies. And at the end, the smaller the baby, the more likely that any intervention will benefit. So the babies who are very small, there is a limited role of these interventions. So to summarize, dear friends, the thermoregulation develops early but immature, hence preterm is a big handicap for hypothermia. The effects of hypothermia may be mild, moderate, or fatal. We saw a wide spectrum of clinical presentation. Understanding the methods of heat loss is very important because you can prevent the heat loss. At the same time, you can also generate systems to warm the baby. The non-shivering thermogenesis and brown adipose tissue are the only mechanisms of heat production in unit. Concept of thermoneutral zone should be very well understood because this is very important when you servo the baby to his particular specific temperature. KMC incubators and warmers can assist maintaining temperature. Barriers of heat loss like clean wrap, decrease in insensible water loss, evaporative losses, and can be used preferably in very small babies. So if you have any queries in this, I can just take up. As I see somebody has asked, sclerema, reverse cold chain, they don't call it reverse cold chain, it's called as a warm chain. So this sclerema is a condition wherein the skin gets very hard and board-like. And this is a severe sepsis, and the mortality in these cases will be more than 85%. So sclerema is seen in very sick babies who are septic. The skin, you cannot pinch the skin. It becomes like woody in character. And it has a very high mortality. And generally the exchange transfusion is only the management of this scleromatous babies. Any other queries? I will be happy to take up. So did you understand what's the mechanism of hypothermia? What are the non-shivering thermogenesis, brown adipose tissue, thermoneutral zone, warm chain, and the role of cling wraps or food grade plastic in case of very small babies to prevent insensible water loss. These are the areas which you should know and which will be asked to you in exam. And also obviously go back and read about KMC, which is altogether a separate topic. So if you don't have any other queries or doubts, shall we close up? Or you want me to wait for your queries to pop up in the question? No? Okay. So, okay, fine. So then try to read hypothermia from your books, and a very important topic. So the care of the newborn starts with management of temperature. Even if you look at the resuscitation, it will be TABC. So the temperature comes before the airway. So that is the importance of hypothermia. In spite of this, if you find any doubts later on, you can kindly connect to me. Thanks a lot.